On a velvet dusk drifting over the Mediterranean, the yacht Aurora glided like a promise across the glassy water just off the shores of Capri, and Nick Marone stood at the bow, heart pounding with the weight of every whispered vow he had ever dared to dream. Months of clandestine planning had led to this moment. The lanterns hung from polished rails, casting a golden net of light over the teak deck. A ribbon of scarlet rose petals trailed between polished teak chairs. String quartet musicians in crisp black suits hovered at the stern, bows paused on strings in pregnant anticipation, and the sea, that ancient witness to countless romances, rippled with gentle applause beneath the growing moon. Brooke Logan, radiant in a flowing ivory gown, stepped onto the deck with a cautious smile, her gaze trying to mask the storm brewing behind her eyes. Two men, Ridge Forrester and Nick, each had claimed her heart in their own way, and tonight she would choose. As Nick dropped to one knee, the world narrowed to a single point of light dancing in Brooke's tear-brimmed eyes. "Brooke," he began, voice thick with both hope and fear, "you are the light that guides me through every dark night, the reason I wake each morning believing in better days. Will you marry me?" The quartet hesitated mid-note. Lanterns glowed brighter. Even the sea stilled to listen. Brooke's lips trembled as she opened her mouth to speak, to accept the ring he held aloft glinting like a star, when the ocean, ever the capricious lover, reached up to disturb their moment. A rogue wave, larger than anticipated, crashed against the hull, sending the Aurora shuddering. Brooke let out a startled gasp as the deck lurched beneath her feet, her sandals sliding on a rogue pedal. In the blink of an eye, she toppled backward toward the railing. Nick sprang forward, arms flailing, but the wave's momentum sent Brooke careening over the side into the cold embrace of the sea. Time fractured. The quartet's melody snapped into panic. Nick's cry tore through the night as he lunged for the rail, leaping after her without hesitation, his proposal forgotten, replaced by raw terror. All at once, the placid sky and tranquil water gave way to chaos. The crash of waves, the thunder of Nick's descent, the sudden, sickening absence of Brooke's light, gone beneath the surface like a dream shattered at dawn. Ridge Forrester, who had strolled onto the deck mere moments earlier, drawn by a mix of jealousy and concern, stood frozen at the foot of the bow, the ring of Brooke's name still fresh on his lips. He had come to accept Brooke's decision, ready to release her to Nick's arms, only to witness the woman he always believed was destined for him vanish into the swirling depths. His hands trembled, a scarlet bead of terror blooming in his chest as he watched Nick hit the water with a splash that echoed in the hush of the night. Brooke's head bobbed once, twice, limbs flailing as she fought the current dragging her below the gentle surface. Nick broke through the waves, his designer jacket trailing like dark smoke behind him, eyes wild with desperation. He reached Brooke's side, fingers curling around her arm even as her weakened body convulsed against the cold. He wrapped both arms around her, kicking toward the surface with the brute strength born of panic. Ridge had already stripped off his shoes and jacket and dove in after them, the two men cutting through the water like frenzied predators and prey, though both were driven by love. At the moment Nick broke free with Brooke cradled against his chest, the quartet's musicians, joined by the crew, pressed their faces to the rail, mouthless cries rising into the star-spangled sky. But the reprieve was fleeting. Brooke's body went limp in Nick's embrace, waves rocking the two as though to steal her away once more. Nick's arms trembled with fatigue and dread, his shouts for help muted by the roar of water. Ridge reached them, plunging his arm under Brooke's shoulders, bracing her weight against his own strength, and together they fought the current, a triangle of devotion and desperation cleaving through the sea. When they finally hauled Brooke back onto the deck, Nick collapsed beside her, gasping, while Ridge knelt opposite, hands pressed to Brooke's damp cheeks as he whispered her name like a prayer. Doctors from the yacht's registered nurse station flooded the deck, stethoscopes pressed to Brooke's chest, goggles rattling as they worked to revive her. Nick's tear-stricken plea, "Don't leave me," Brooke, reverberated across the water, while Ridge's fervent promise, "I won't let you go," jammed against the seams of night. Moments stretched into eternity before Brooke's eyelids fluttered open, unfocused, and her gaze landed not on Nick's tear-streaked face, but on Ridge's too close proximity. Her breath came in ragged sobs, and as the nurse administered oxygen, Brooke's fingers reached out blindly, brushing Ridge's arm. Then her eyes flicked to Nick, and something in them wavered, a lost note in a melody she once knew by heart. She clutched at that wavering thought before it slipped away, pressing a hand to her temple as if to chase back memories that had dissolved in the cold embrace of the sea. When Brooke began to speak, her voice trembled. Where am I?" The doctors murmured to one another. Her oxygen levels were stabilizing, her heartbeat strong, but her memory showed signs of trauma. The cold water and lack of oxygen had threatened not only her life, but the fragile tapestry of memories weaving her loves for Nick and Ridge. Nick leaned forward, voice trembling. "Brooke, it's me, Nick. I love you." Brooke's eyes clouded as she reached for his hand, then withdrew it, confusion marring her features. Ridge, kneeling beside Nick, offered his own hand. "Brooke, it's Ridge." I'm here." Brooke's brow furrowed as her gaze darted between them, blank as the moonlit horizon. Guilt and fear crashed into Nick's chest, the ring still nestled in his pocket, a promise undone by tragedy. Ridge recoiled, his face ashen. The woman he believed belonged beside him seemed a stranger now, her heart suspended between two men, memories adrift like flotsam in the sea. Brooke's lips quivered as tears welled anew, tears not solely of fear but of loss. She whispered, voice thick with terror, I don't remember." The crack in the silence sounded like glass splitting, and in that moment both men felt the magnitude of their despair. Nick, whose sacrifice might never be remembered, Ridge, whose destiny with Brooke seemed to melt away in her uncertain gaze. As doctors worked to stabilize Brooke's vitals, the yawning questions stretched across the yacht's polished deck and into the night. Who would she choose when her memories returned, if they ever did? The sea whispered its cruel reminder. The waves had claimed not only her consciousness, but the future upon which both Nick and Ridge had staked their hearts. And beneath the lantern-lit deck, two men knelt side by side, bound by love and sorrow, waiting for dawn to break and reveal what would be left of Brooke's heart and their own. Taylor Hayes stood on the windswept bluff above the Mediterranean, the salt spray tang of the sea still clinging to her skin like a ghostly reminder of Brooke's plunge and the chaos that had nearly claimed Ridge's life, and Nick's hope, on that ill-fated yacht. In the days since Brooke's rescue, Taylor's heart had oscillated between relief and an ache so deep it threatened to shatter her spirit. She mourned the woman she had once called friend and the man she had once loved, even as she feared the consequences of Brooke's potential amnesia. Yet amid her grief there stirred a sharper emotion, suspicion. How could a rogue wave, an accident so improbably timed during Nick's proposal, split the deck and hurl Brooke overboard at the precise moment that would redefine every alliance, every loyalty, every destiny? The more Taylor pondered that question, the more the simple explanation unraveled. She recalled Ridge's distracted glance before the explosion of water, Nick's anguished hesitation as he first dove for Brooke, the crew member who had inexplicably been reassigned from the primary rail to the aft just days before. A freak accident requires no forethought. This had echoed with calculated design. Taylor pressed her fingers to her temple, memory pooling fragments. A hushed conversation she'd overheard between two foreign investors in Cappadocia, a blueprint of the yacht's rigging with a suspiciously bright highlight around the pedal dispensing chute, the fleeting glimpse of a woman in black gloves slipping away from the engine room. She knew then that her role in this drama could not end with Brooke's survival or Ridge's recovery. If she did nothing, rumors would swirl, Brooke's memory might return twisted by falsehoods, and Ridge would be forever haunted by the notion that fate, rather than malice, had delivered the woman he loved into another man's arms. Determined to unmask the truth, Taylor reached out to the one person most qualified to navigate the underworld of secrets and betrayal, Sheila Carter. The thought of allying with Sheila Carter Sharp, the woman whose name was whispered like a curse in the corridors of Forrester Creations, might have once caused Taylor's blood to run cold. Sheila's history of manipulation, her unbridled ambition, and her mastery of concealed motives made her a pariah among caretakers of virtue and honesty. Yet Taylor recognized that Sheila's resourcefulness was precisely what she needed. Access to shadow networks, the ruthlessness to infiltrate security records, the willingness to do what Ridge and Eric dared not. Over a discreet breakfast in a dimly lit back room of a Monaco cafe, Taylor laid out her theory and the scattered clues she had culled: the tampered wave gauges, the oddly silent cellular logs, the crew member's brief absence, and the orchestrated notice that had drawn Ridge to the bow that fateful night. Sheila listened with a half-smile, her eyes narrowed behind polished glasses, each sip of espresso punctuating the gravity of Taylor's revelations. When Taylor finished, breathless with urgency, Sheila leaned forward and whispered, "You're right to mistrust fate when someone can tip the scales." Together they forged an uneasy pact. Taylor would supply the emotional truth, her intimate knowledge of the Forrester Circle, the timeline of events, her patient observations of Brooke's condition. While Sheila would provide the means to root out the saboteur, hidden cameras, digital forensics, and the kind of leverage that shattered alibis and severed loyalties. In the days that followed, Taylor and Sheila plunged into the investigation like two sides of the same coin. Taylor, driven by empathy and moral clarity; Sheila, guided by cunning and an appetite for retribution. Under moonlit skies, they crept into the yacht's docking area to inspect the hull and follow the cable runs leading to the pyrotechnics control console, collecting fragments of shell casing that had lodged in the pedal launcher. In smoke-filled back rooms, they interrogated dock workers fearful of retribution and bribed a technician to decrypt encrypted ship logs. Each piece of evidence pointed to a conspiracy far broader than a single rogue wave. The saboteur had studied Brooke's schedule, anticipated Ridge's preoccupation with Taylor's overtures of reconciliation, and exploited Nick's bold proposal to deliver the ultimate blow, separating Brooke from Ridge irrevocably, under the guise of chance. As they pieced together the identity of the puppeteer, a longtime rival within Forrester Creations whose career had stalled under Ridge's ascendancy, a deeper horror set in. Brooke's fall had been engineered not only to fracture the triangle of love, but to topple the Forrester dynasty itself. Taylor felt her resolve harden into steel. She could forgive Ridge's betrayals, Brooke's indecision, even Nick's recklessness, but she would not forgive a crime against the woman she had once called sister, nor allow an orchestrated tragedy to defile the legacy her family had built. When Sheila, armed with forged credentials, a hidden camera feed, and the saboteur's own confession captured on a planted listening device, whispered her plan, Taylor's eyes flashed with conviction. They would confront the enemy at the upcoming launch gala for Capricorn Rising, the very event the saboteur had hoped to use as a platform for disgrace. There, before the assembled guests of the fashion elite, Taylor would reveal the evidence. The weld marks on the launch rails, the incriminating code in the ship's programming, the saboteur's desperate voicemail to a shadowy accomplice. With Sheila's backup, security cameras repurposed, and staff loyal to the truth, they would force a confession that would shatter hush-money deals and expose the full scope of the plot. And as for Brooke, whose fragile memory hovered between darkness and light, Taylor vowed she would guide her back to the truth of her own heart. To recall Nick's sacrifice in the sea and Ridge's heroic rescue, to choose not by default or deception, but by the clarity of genuine love. In that alliance forged of necessity and mistrust, Taylor Hayes rediscovered a fierce purpose: to be the guardian of justice in a world accustomed to glamour over substance, to stand beside the woman she loved as a friend, and to vanquish the unseen hand that sought to steer their destinies into ruin. Proving that even in the shadows cast by betrayal, the unblinking light of truth can ignite a reckoning that no tide, no scheme, and no act of cruelty can ever extinguish.